Hi there, I'm Carmen Amato here in Tennessee for another crime conversation with my lovely counterpart.
I'm Jane Harvey Berrick and I'm in the UK.
So today we're talking about the very touchy subject of undocumented migrants, numbers of specifically Chinese migrants into the US in 2023 and 2024. Over an 8,000% increase
Wow.
in the number of Chinese at the US Mexican border,
Wow.
and a doubling of the number who are coming from Canada into the US. At the time when this surge was really becoming evident, um, in early 2024, people were wondering if there wasn't something more than just this is an economic situation, that things have gotten so tough in China that people are leaving. And there were congressional hearings about the prospect of Beijing inserting espionage operatives into this migrant flow.
We had a similar sort of thing when we started accepting a lot of Ukrainian refugees. We know that there were some Russians inserted in there as well. I mean, it's something you and I have mentioned before.
Same time they're talking about this, there's been a marked increase in the number of Chinese incursions into US military bases.
Oh yeah, and
Take pictures.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and there
Oh yeah,
was,
that's right. There was a chap just recently who said he was a tourist and he'd got off the track, but he was actually taking pictures of the base.
yes, they've caught them scuba diving around bases and claiming that they had a hotel reservation or a restaurant reservation or that Google
Mm,
directed them there. And in most cases, if they're apprehended in 2023, the system was so backlogged that it could be 3 or 4 years before they were actually supposed to come to court and
yeah,
have their asylum case reviewed.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so there was one gentleman who came in 2023. He was given a court hearing date 4 years in the future. And this past January, he was arrested for taking pictures on classified military base.
Right.
With Dragon Cartel, my challenge is, even though all the events take place in Mexico, the impact is being felt in the US. So I have to connect those two things through the lens of Detective Amelia
Yeah,
Cruz in
yeah.
Acapulco.
What was your original idea for that?
My original idea came from hearing about the spike in unauthorized migrations of Chinese coming over the border, and the question of why there were so many who looked like military. Jane, how are you addressing this?
I've addressed the topic of illegal migrants and organized crime bringing drugs into the country in my book Dead Water, Cornish crime thrillers set in the southwest of the UK. But in the next book I'm writing, I'm tackling the topic in a slightly different way, looking at how some of these people are trafficked once they get here, undocumented, and fall into the hands of unscrupulous gangmasters who keep their passports and then charge them for very substandard accommodations. So these people can never pay off the so-called debt. It can never get ahead. And I came across a real life story in a local newspaper where one Romanian chap had been in this condition for 15 years. And he'd been trafficked around the country working on various farms and low paid labor and not received any money. And he was so scared of going to the police because he was undocumented and illegally crossed here illegally. And so he's in this terrible situation. So I've come to the topic from two slightly different angles in two different books, and that's the research I'm doing at the moment. And of course, Great Britain is a series of islands. So our pinch point is we are 20 miles from France. Calais to Kent is just 21 miles of coastline. And so we're getting migrants coming every day on the small boats. And some of them are very small and not, they're kind of like the kind of rubber dinghy you might take out on the beach, getting people dying trying to do this journey. And it's got worse and worse and worse. And a lot of it is economic migration. We get a lot of Afghan refugees, but also Sudanese. We're starting to see Vietnamese refugees as well. Charging people about £2,000 for each crossing and putting them in an unsafe vessel of some description and just saying 20 miles that way, off you go. They're not taking them necessarily. They're just putting them in a boat. And the theory is that if the boat is not seaworthy, and many of them aren't, they will get picked up either by the French Navy or the British Navy. But if they are unlucky, they're not making it. And we had one case that was just a friend of mine worked on this, absolutely horrific, where they were Chinese migrants and they were put in a container in a lorry with their phones. And then the container was taken to a port in the UK and they were just left there. And they all died. There was 15 of them in this container. And my friend in the National Crime Agency was one of a group of people who had to, when the bodies were finally found, they retained the phones and they had to listen to these people calling for help, but they couldn't tell anyone where they were.